The president is taunting North Korea as he brags that his nuclear button is, quote, much bigger and more powerful than Kim Jong-un's. That was just one of the tweets. So let's get perspective from Ned Ryan, a former presidential writer for George W. Bush, and Democratic strategist Keith Boykin. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Ned, I'll start with you. If you were the one advising the president, how would you articulate the significance of these types of tweets?
Well, I have to admit I'm a little perplexed as to why people are so bent out of shape over the whole situation, because we are coming to a head with this whole situation. The can's been kicked down the road for decades, and people are losing their minds over some of these tweets when, in fact, Obama and Clinton and others have used very strong rhetoric against North Korea. And quite frankly, there's nothing untrue about what Trump said. He could annihilate North Korea in a matter of minutes if that's what it comes to. Nobody wants to see that happen. At the same time, we're concerned that North Korea is, what, a year or two away from re-entry technology and can put American cities under nuclear threat every day. And so something has to be done. So I look at these tweets and people's response to them and go, let's not forget what we're dealing with. We are dealing with an existential threat to American citizens that if we do not put a halt to this within the next year or two, American citizens could be living under the daily threat of nuclear capabilities, and nobody wants to see that happen.
Keith, I'm going to let you respond to that, because part of the argument here is everyone does really understand what the threat is. So the fear is these types of taunts escalate a situation that cannot be escalated without a loss of life.
Yes, I think that's right. The existential threat that we face as American citizens in response to Ned is that Donald Trump, our president, is playing war games on Twitter, on social media. He's threatening nuclear war with a nuclear-powered country. Remember, Donald Trump said during the during the campaign, he said that North Korea would never develop nuclear weapons. Just earlier this year, he said North Korea would not develop nuclear weapons. Guess what? North Korea has developed nuclear weapons. He said that if North Korea developed weapons that would threaten us, or if North Korea tried to threaten us, he would promise fire and fury. There has been no fire and fury. What we have instead seen is demagogic rhetoric, unnecessary rhetoric from the President of the United States, unnecessary rhetoric that escalates a situation that should be handled by mature adults, by diplomats, not by Twitter. You do not handle a nuclear conflict on social media.
Ned, I'll let you respond to that, because I think this goes to, I'll let you respond to that, because I think this goes to a larger issue of his use of Twitter. There are significant issues where his opinion plays out in a way that can't be articulated in 140 characters and leaves a lot of room for miscommunication.
Well, first of all, we have to go back and understand that we have attempted diplomacy for the last over 2 decades, 25 years almost. We have tried to bribe this regime with food and money, and they still have not been dissuaded from pursuing what is the ultimate goal of this regime. And so I think what you're seeing Trump do is obviously increase the rhetoric. This is brinkmanship. It is absolutely a game of brinkmanship, and people need to be reminded that there will be no sanctuary and that they could be completely annihilated if they will not cooperate with us. At the same time, we're also seeing Nikki Haley do the best that she can at the UN with sanctions, which I don't think will work. I think actually what we need to do is lean into China a little bit more to get them to put more pressure on North Korea, specifically on oil imports. That all to say, I think that he is exploring every option. At the same time, I do think we're in a game of brinkmanship. I do not find his rhetoric that much different from what Obama and Clinton and others have used. In fact, General Mattis in September said, we could be talking about the complete and total annihilation of North Korea. We are coming to a head. I think it's time that we actually have to address this. At the same time, you're seeing some of this start to result. Let's look at what he's doing right now. North Korea is opening, it looks like, channels to have conversations with South Korea. So I think that they're exploring every option at the same time, absolutely in a game of brinkmanship.
What North Korea is doing right now is probably a strategic move to align itself with South Korea, to divide, not alignment in terms of agreement, but alignment in terms of creating a wedge, a division between the United States and South Korea. But this is in response to what Trump is doing. And I think that Trump is using rhetoric on Twitter, on social media. That is the problem. Regardless of what he says.
The thing is that you guys are going to disagree on that. The use of Twitter, that's common between Trump supporters and Trump critics. Trump supporters believe it's okay to have that kind of rhetoric on Twitter. We need that kind of tough rhetoric. And Keith, to that point, what is your response to some of these Trump voters who we saw in the election say the reason I'm voting for him is because he has that tough rhetoric, and the reason that the last 8 years North Korea has been able to build that arsenal is because there wasn't that kind of rhetoric? What's your response to that?
Well, I mean, the evidence indicates that Trump's rhetoric has not been effective. I mean, he's been talking the tough game since he came in office a year ago. He's threatened North Korea repeatedly on Twitter. That hasn't forced them to back down. They've tested more and more missiles. In fact, they've tested missiles that now have the range to reach the United States and to reach Washington, D.C. It shows that Trump's rhetoric is ineffective. So I could understand possibly if you make the argument and say that you can use kind of strategic, tough rhetoric, even on social media in order to achieve a game, but it's not achieving the game. You can't make promises and threats like Trump did and say, we're going to promise fire and fury if North Korea threatens us again. Then North Korea threatens us again, and there's no fire and fury. He's a paper tiger. No one takes Donald Trump seriously because of this.
Ned, I want to get your response to something else that he tweeted about, because I know that we could go back and forth on this for a while. He tweeted this: I will be announcing the most dishonest and corrupt media awards of the year on Monday at 5 o'clock. Subjects will cover dishonesty and bad reporting in various categories from the fake news media. Stay tuned. In just the last month, he had denied watching up to 8 hours of TV news. What do you make of all of this? Do you think this is effective?
Well, I think that it's been clear that we've seen over the last year that some people have really dropped pretenses. I mean, you look at the New York Times in the last couple days in regards to some of the stories they've written. I think some of the press has just completely dropped the pretense, and they've embraced being the opposition party. So this ongoing war with Trump and the media that started and really heated up in 2017, I don't think you're going to see it die down at all in 2018. And I think he's got a fair argument. When you look at some of these outlets that have over 90% negative coverage of him in 2017, I think he has actually a pretty fair argument that he has not gotten objective treatment by a lot of people in the mainstream media. I think that the war will continue, and quite frankly, it plays well with his base.
When you say the war will continue, Keith, do you think that's a war worth fighting? Do you think that's a war that is productive for the American public?
It's not productive for the American public. It's a war for Trump's base. The base loves to attack the media. They love to attack CNN, the New York Times, and the liberal elite and the Washington media. But the reality is that the media do their job the best they can. When they make mistakes, they correct their mistakes, they apologize. Unlike Donald Trump, who never apologized whenever he makes mistakes. He never apologized for lying about President Obama for 5.5 years about his birth certificate. He never apologized to the Central Park Five for lying about them, accusing them of a crime they did not commit. Donald Trump doesn't apologize for anything, and when he does apologize on the rare occasions he did with the sexual assault allegation, he immediately tries to deny that he ever did anything wrong. So I think that we have a president who is immature versus a media that is trying to hold him accountable, and we need the media to serve as a check and a balance against the president who's acting with autocratic tendencies.
Ned, to Keith's point, the times that we have reported on President Trump saying something that turned out to not be the case, and we never heard anything from him after that, do you think that that's hypocritical for him to criticize the media?
No, I don't actually. I would actually argue that some of the things that we've been looking at, and I've been looking at, is, I mean, you look at for example, the New York Times, with yet another anonymously sourced article going after Trump. At some point, listen, I'm all for a free press. I am all for accountability. I'm also for an honest press. And I would actually argue it's time to just drop the masquerade. Just admit who you are. You have biases. You have narrative that you want to drive. And that's fine. All of us come into this with presuppositions and biases. Let's just be honest about them and continue to have disagreements. That's fine. I totally agree with that. Let's stop the masquerade, though, about being just, we're trying to be fair all the time, because none of us on this side actually buy that argument that they're trying to be fair all the time.
WikiLeaks was an anonymous source, too, and Trump had no problem pushing those leaks.
That is also something that's quite your opinion. There are people that build their careers, myself included, on being unbiased, bringing both sides of the story, which I hope we did right here in this segment. I think that's the point of it. Ned Ryan and Keith Boykin, thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.